Lagos glittered under the night sky, its skyline stretching like a jeweled crown along the Atlantic. From the glowing towers of Victoria Island to the bustling nightlife of Lekki and Ikoyi, the city pulsed with energy. Fast cars sped through neon-lit roads, rooftop lounges overflowed with music, and champagne glasses clinked in the hands of the elite. To the outside world, Lagos was a paradise, a city where wealth and ambition danced hand in hand. But beneath the glitz, something darker stirred. Fear lingered in whispers and shadows. One by one, women from the city's high society were dying. It began quietly. A supermodel found lifeless in her Lekki mansion. A week later, a popular event hostess collapsed in her Ikoyi apartment. Soon it became a chilling pattern. 5 young, beautiful women, all connected to Lagos's elite, discovered lifeless with the same terrifying mark: 2 puncture wounds on their necks. No blood, no signs of struggle, no explanation. The press branded it the Skyline Curse. Newspapers speculated about secret cults. Social media exploded with theories of serial killers, rituals, and marine spirits from the Atlantic Ocean. Mothers whispered warnings to their daughters, and influencers canceled appearances at luxury clubs. But the strangest part wasn't the deaths themselves. It was the silence around them. No fingerprints, no forced entries, no CCTV footage of strangers. Police stood on podiums promising answers, but their words only deepened public fear. And yet, in the midst of the storm, one man's name rose higher than the rest: Obinna Nwosu. At just 34, he was the billionaire founder of Nwosu Tech Security, a company whose surveillance systems lined the homes of the rich and powerful. His face filled billboards, magazines, and television screens. Dark-skinned, sharply handsome, always in tailored suits, he was adored as Lagos's golden son. At gala, women vied for a smile from him. At conferences, men admired his brilliance. But behind closed doors, Lagos trembled. Because while fear consumed the city, Obinna remained untouched, his empire thriving, his reputation shining. And in whispers, suspicion began to creep. For on the very night another body was found, Lekki Phase 1, Obinna stood in his penthouse above the Atlantic, sipping tea with a faint smile. To the city, he was a savior. But to fate, he was a serpent, waiting in the dark. In Lekki Phase 1, a boutique still smelled of new fabric and fresh paint. Bright dresses hung in the window, their colors alive with the laughter and creativity of their maker, Ifeoma Okoye. At only 25, she had finally achieved her dream, opening her own fashion studio. Her Instagram page overflowed with photos from the launch night. Ifeoma smiling in a red gown she had stitched herself, friends cheering, clients praising her gift. But just weeks later, those same images turned into memorials. Rest in peace now filled her comment sections. Ifeoma had been found lifeless in her apartment. Pale, still, 2 strange punctures on her neck. The city wept. But for one woman, grief burned like fire. Thousands of kilometers away in London, Chiamaka Okoye sat frozen as the news reached her. Her younger sister was gone. Her heart cracked. But something inside her hardened too. Ifeoma wasn't just another name in the string of mysterious deaths. She was family. She was light. And Chiamaka would not allow her to be forgotten in silence. Within days, she boarded a flight back to Lagos. The skyline that once looked like home now felt like an enemy. Stepping into her sister's apartment, Chiamaka was swallowed by absence. Perfume still lingered in the air. Sketches lay scattered across the desk. A half-finished gown rested on the mannequin, waiting for hands that would never return. Chiamaka sat on the edge of the bed, trembling, scrolling through Ifeoma's phone. At first it was full of joy, voice notes, emojis, and jokes with friends. But then, in the last few days, the tone shifted. Replies grew shorter. Messages carried unease. One note stood out. There's something strange about him, but I don't know what. Chiamaka's breath caught. Who was him? Why hadn't her sister said more? Her eyes turned to the calendar app. 2 nights before Ifeoma's death, one event was marked clearly. Nwosu Tech Gala Echo Pearl Towers. Chiamaka's jaw clenched. She had seen his face already, Obinna Nwosu. His billboards glared down at her on her taxi ride from the airport. His name filled magazines in the cafe downstairs. He was everywhere, smiling, polished, adored. But now every sign pointed to him. In the quiet of the room, Chiamaka whispered, her voice trembling with grief and resolve. Ifeoma, I promise you, I will find the truth. The city might have been blinded by Obinna's wealth and charm. But Chiamaka Okoye was not blinded. She had come home not just to mourn, but to fight. And somewhere across Lagos, in his Victoria Island penthouse, Obinna Nwosu stood before the ocean, sipping wine. A faint smile touched his lips, as though he already knew she was coming. The city adored Obinna Nwosu. On magazine covers, he was the face of innovation, the man who made Lagos safer through his company, Nwosu Tech Security. In charity galas, he donated millions to schools and widows' foundations. At conferences, he spoke of progress, of vision, of Africa's bright future. Men admired him, women desired him, and the media worshipped him. But perfection has a price. Behind the glass walls of his Victoria Island penthouse, Obinna stood in silence most mornings, staring out at the restless Atlantic. Few knew the truth that years ago on that very ocean, he had made a blood pact with a marine spirit. In exchange for untouchable success, charm, and wealth, his body had become a vessel. A serpent lived inside him, silent, hungry, waiting. Each time it fed, draining the life of a young woman, Obinna grew stronger. His empire expanded. His charm deepened. His fortune multiplied. And no one suspected a thing. The city saw only the polished savior, Obinna shaking hands with governors, posing for photos with orphans, smiling with humility. If anyone dared whisper his name alongside the killings, they were laughed at. How could Lagos's golden son be guilty of such horror? Impossible. But in truth, every sacrifice stitched another thread into his empire. Each puncture mark on a woman's neck was another coin in his fortune. On the morning after Ifeoma Okoye's death, Obinna stood before the ocean with a glass of tea in hand. The waves roared below, the sky blushed with dawn, and his lips curved in a faint smile. To him, her passing was not tragedy. It was fuel, another offering to his power. Yet Obinna did not know this time would be different. Because unlike the others, Ifeoma had a sister who carried more than grief, she carried fire. And fire, even against a serpent, can burn. The Echo Pearl Towers. Banquet hall shimmered with golden lights that evening, its glass walls reflecting the vast Atlantic beyond. Inside, the city's elite gathered in sequined gowns and tuxedos, laughter swirling under crystal chandeliers. Every handshake was a transaction, every smile a performance. Chiamaka Okoye stepped into the hall dressed in a simple black gown. No glitter, no diamonds, no false smile. Her elegance was quiet, but undeniable. To others, she looked like just another guest. But inside she carried a storm grief for her sister and a hunger for truth. Across the room, Obinna Nwosu was finishing a conversation with the governor's wife when his eyes caught hers. For a brief moment, the music seemed to fade. Obinna was used to women faltering under his gaze, giggling, whispering, or sending drinks to his table. But Chiamaka did not flinch. Her eyes met his for only a second before sliding past him, as if he were nothing more than a shadow on the wall. Obinna tilted his head, curiosity flashing in his dark eyes. A faint smile touched his lips, but it didn't reach his chest. Something twisted inside him. She was different. At the wine table, Chiamaka pretended to scroll through her phone, all the while scanning the room, listening to the laughter, the whispers, the calculated movements of the wealthy. Yet when her gaze brushed across Obinna again, her body stiffened. It wasn't attraction. It was instinct. There was something in the way he looked at her. Not admiration, not curiosity, but hunger, like a predator studying prey. Her chest tightened, her spirit whispering, "Stay away from this man." But she didn't leave. She stayed in the corner, calm and quiet, the way a psychologist might observe a patient. Only this time, the patient was not human. By the end of the night, Obinna left the gala as he always did. Smooth, polite, untouchable. But unlike before, he carried something heavy with him, an obsession. He could charm any woman in the room, but the one who resisted him had become the only one he wanted. And as Chiamaka returned to Ifeoma's apartment that night, unease gnawed at her. She could still feel his eyes, calm yet burning, following her across the hall. On the other side of the city, Obinna poured himself a glass of red wine, standing by the ocean-facing window. His lips curved faintly as he whispered to the night, "She'll be mine, sooner or later." The serpent inside him stirred. The morning after the gala, Chiamaka Okoye sat cross-legged on Ifeoma's bed, her sister's phone open beside her, laptop balanced on her knees. Sleep had evaded her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Obinna stare calm, confident, yet disturbingly hungry. She began to dig. 5 women, 5 deaths, a model, an influencer, a hostess, a lawyer, and Ifeoma. Each had attended events linked to Nwosu Tech yacht parties, banquets, charity galas. Every trail curved back to the same name, Obinna Nwosu. But suspicion wasn't proof. Chiamaka needed voices, someone who had seen beyond the mask. That afternoon, she met Mama Ronke, a former housemaid who once cleaned Obinna's penthouse. They sat tucked away in the corner of a noisy Surulere cafe. Mama Ronke's voice trembled as she spoke. At night on the top floor, I would hear it, hissing. Not pipes, not speakers, real hissing, wet, heavy, alive. And the air, she shivered, clutching her wrapper tighter. It felt like something was watching me, even when I was alone. Chiamaka's chest tightened. A snake? I didn't wait to find out, Mama Ronke whispered. I left before it found me. She rose quickly, her hands trembling as she gripped her bag, and slipped out into the bustling street, leaving Chiamaka with more questions than answers. That evening, while buying roasted corn at a roadside stand, Chiamaka overheard 2 elderly women whispering. They say the man is not normal, one said. Which man? The eating man, came the hushed reply, from the old stories. He walks in fine clothes, but something lives inside him. The words tangled with Mama Ronke's fear, with Ifeoma's cryptic message, with the memory of Obinna's gaze. Back in the quiet of the apartment, Chiamaka scribbled names, events, and whispers across a page. Every arrow pointed to him. Her grief burned into rage. She whispered into the silence, her voice trembling but sharp. Obinna Nwosu, what are you? Across the city, in his Victoria Island penthouse, Obinna stood shirtless before a wall of glass, city lights flickering against his skin. A faint smile curved his lips. He could feel her drawing closer. And then, that night, Chiamaka's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? The voice on the other end was smooth, calm, and unsettlingly familiar. Good evening, Chiamaka. Her blood ran cold. Who is this? A soft laugh curled through the line. Obinna Nwosu. That night, after Obinna's unsettling call, Chiamaka Okoye sat trembling on the floor of her sister's apartment. His words weren't a compliment, they were possession. His voice had crawled under her skin, calm and polite, but sharp as a blade. Her friend Adaize Eze stopped by with a bowl of pepper soup. She studied Chiamaka's pale face. You look haunted, Adaize whispered. Chiamaka forced a weak smile. I feel like I'm chasing a ghost. Adaize shook her head. No, you're trying to use logic to fight something logic cannot catch. Some answers live in shadows science cannot see. The words lingered long after Adaize left. For the first time in her life, Chiamaka, the rational psychologist, began to wonder if reason wasn't enough. By dawn, she found herself walking through a narrow alley in Mushin, guided by whispers of a local herbalist. The shop was hidden between crowded kiosks, its wooden door painted with fading symbols. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and herbs. The herbalist, an old woman with sharp eyes, studied her silently before speaking. There is a man walking in the city with a demon in his trousers. He does not sleep. He feeds. Chiamaka's blood ran cold. Who is he? The woman leaned closer. You will not win with logic. Go to Oji River. Find Mama Nena. She sees what others refuse to see. The very next morning, Chiamaka packed her bag and boarded a bus eastward. Lagos's glittering skyline faded behind her, replaced by quiet countryside and winding roads. Hours later, she arrived in the heart of Oji River. A motorcycle taxi carried her deeper into the bush until they stopped before a round hut, painted with strange white markings. Smoke rose gently from the roof. Inside, the air was heavy with ancient power. Clay pots lined the walls, firelight flickered on strange carvings, and at the center sat Mama Nena, her hair tied with red string. Her eyes closed as if she had been waiting. You've come because of Ifeoma, the woman said before Chiamaka spoke. Tears welled in Chiamaka's eyes. Yes, I need to know who took her life. Mama Nena's eyes opened slowly, piercing straight into her soul. His name is Obinna Nwosu. He walks like a king, speaks like honey, but inside him lives a serpent born of the sea. Chiamaka's lips trembled. What do you mean? Mama Nena reached for a small wooden box. Inside lay an ivory whistle carved with ancestral symbols. She pressed it into Chiamaka's palm. Blow this at the peak of his evil when the serpent rises. But hear me, child, it listens only to the one whose heart is clean. If you carry greed, lust, or anger, the serpent will not obey. It will destroy you instead. Chiamaka stared at the whistle. It looked fragile, ordinary, yet it hummed in her hand with a quiet, terrifying power. For the first time since Ifeoma's death, she felt like she was holding more than grief. She was holding a weapon, and she whispered to the night, I will end this, I swear it. Back in Lagos, the city buzzed as though nothing was wrong, clubs overflowing, luxury cars roaring down Lekki roads, influencers posting champagne-fueled selfies. But Chiamaka Okoye walked through the noise with a different burden. In her clutch bag lay the ivory whistle, smooth and cool against her palm. Mama Nena's words rang in her ears. It listens only to the pure. If your heart carries greed, lust, or anger, the serpent will destroy you instead. That night, her phone lit up again. Obinna Nwosu. She hesitated, then answered, her voice calm, steady, almost warm. Maybe I've been too hard on you, she said softly. Maybe I just needed time. On the other end of the line, Obinna leaned back in his leather chair, a slow grin spreading across his face. He muted the call and raised a glass of wine to the empty room. I knew it, he whispered. She's mine. 3 nights later, the invitation arrived, a private dinner at his Victoria Island penthouse. Most women in Lagos would have boasted about such a message on Instagram, but for Chiamaka, it felt like walking into the jaws of a beast. The evening breeze swept her dress as she stood before the towering glass building. High above, the ocean stretched dark and endless. Her fingers brushed the whistle hidden in her bag. She whispered under her breath, "Ifeoma, give me strength." Inside, the penthouse was a palace of glass and light. Expensive art lined the walls, candlelight glowed across silver platters, and soft jazz floated from invisible speakers. The air carried the scent of rare wine, intoxicating, almost hypnotic. Obinna greeted her in a black tailored suit, his perfect smile radiating warmth. "Chiamaka," he said smoothly. "I was beginning to think you'd never say yes." She forced a faint smile, steadying her heartbeat. Maybe I just needed a reason. Dinner was elegance itself. Obinna asked about her life, her studies abroad, her dreams. He listened intently, his gaze locked on hers as if she were the only soul in the world. To anyone else, it would feel like a dream. But Chiamaka saw the predator beneath the polish. When his fingers brushed lightly over hers across the table, a cold shiver ran through her body. She remembered Mama Nena's warning. He will tempt you. He will offer you riches, safety, even love. Resist, and the serpent will be yours to command. Chiamaka's jaw tightened. She wasn't here to be charmed. She was here to finish it. And as Obinna lifted his glass, his eyes glinting like the ocean at night, she knew the moment was coming when the serpent inside him would finally rise. The candles flickered in the vast penthouse, their glow casting tall shadows on the glass walls. From outside, the Atlantic roared, as if the sea itself knew what was about to unfold. Obinna Nwosu leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine. His voice was velvet, low and deliberate. "You know, Chiamaka, people think wealth is built with strategy, with work, but the truth?" He paused, his smile widening. "The truth is that real power is fed." Chiamaka's pulse quickened. She kept her face calm, remembering Mama Nena's words. "Do not fight him with anger. He will tempt you. Resist, and the serpent will be yours to command." Obinna rose from his chair, moving to stand by the floor-to-ceiling window. City lights shimmered on his reflection. He turned, his eyes darker than before, almost glowing. "You're not like the others," he said softly. "You didn't melt. You didn't giggle. You looked at me as if I were nothing, and that," his lips curled into a grin, "is why I must have you." The air shifted. A low, wet hissing filled the room. From beneath his tailored suit, something stirred scales pressing against fabric, a shadow moving under his skin. Chiamaka gripped her clutch, her heart hammering. The whistle felt alive in her palm, humming with ancestral energy. Obinna's voice deepened, layered as though another being spoke through him. "Your sister was delicious. Vibrant, yes, but fleeting. You carry fire. The serpent craves fire." Rage threatened to explode in Chiamaka's chest, but she held it back. If anger clouded her heart, the whistle would betray her. She steadied her breath, whispering silently, "Ifeoma, help me stand." Obinna stepped closer, his perfect mask unraveling, his jaw stretched unnaturally, his smile too wide, his eyes burning gold. From his collar, scales shimmered as the serpent inside pushed forward. The candles flickered violently. The room thickened with a suffocating heat. And then with a sudden lunge, Obinna's hand shot toward her. His voice roared, "You are mine!" Chiamaka leapt back, clutching the whistle. For the first time, terror and courage fused inside her. The moment Mama Nena had warned of had come. The serpent had risen. Her chest burned, her hands shook, but her spirit remained clean. With every ounce of her will, she lifted the whistle to her lips and blew. The sound was not like air. It was thunder. It was ocean. It was ancestors crying out through bone and fire. Obinna staggered, clutching his chest as the serpent inside shrieked, scales tearing through his skin, his perfect image shattered. For the first time, Lagos's golden sun was unmasked. The sound of the ivory whistle echoed like thunder through the penthouse, rattling the glass walls. The ocean roared louder, waves crashing against Victoria Island, as if the sea itself answered the call. Obinna Nwosu fell to his knees, clutching his chest. His suit tore as black scales burst through his skin. From his throat a hiss rose, wet and furious. The serpent inside him fought violently, caught between its master and the ancestral command. Chiamaka's hands trembled, but she blew again, harder this time. The whistle burned in her palm, light spilling from the carvings etched into its surface. Obinna's voice split, layered with the sound of another being. "Stop! Do you know what you're doing?" The serpent's golden eyes flashed through his. His jaw stretched unnaturally, teeth sharp, tongue flicking. The air grew heavy, suffocating, yet Chiamaka's spirit held firm. "I know who you are," she said, her voice steady. "You killed my sister. You killed them all, and tonight you end." Obinna staggered, half man, half creature, his once perfect face twisted into something monstrous. "I gave this city schools, wealth, protection. Without me, it will crumble," he roared. "No," Chiamaka whispered, lifting the whistle once more. "You gave it fear dressed as gifts, and fear must die." With a final blow, the whistle screamed louder than before. The serpent shrieked, ripping free from Obinna's body, a massive shadow with glistening scales and burning eyes. It thrashed against the glass walls, shaking the tower itself. Obinna collapsed, gasping, his charm stripped, his mask shattered. For the first time in years, he was simply a man, weak, trembling, hollow. The serpent turned, its gaze fixed on Chiamaka. The warning of Mama Nena pierced her memory. If your heart carries greed, lust, or anger, the serpent will not obey you. It will destroy you instead. Fear surged, but she forced it down. She thought of Ifeoma's laughter, of her sister's unfinished gown, of the promise she made by the bedside. "I will find the truth. I will end this." Her heart was not full of vengeance. It was full of love. The serpent shivered, recoiling. Then, with one final hiss, it dissolved into dust, scattered into the night wind that howled across the Atlantic. The penthouse fell silent. Obinna lay broken, stripped of power, staring up at her with hollow eyes. His empire, built on blood and deception, had crumbled in a single night. Chiamaka lowered the whistle, tears spilling freely down her cheeks. She had not just fought for Ifeoma, she had fought for every woman whose life had been stolen. And for the first time in months, Lagos exhaled. The sun rose over Lagos, painting the Atlantic in shades of gold. For the first time in months, the city felt lighter, as though an unseen weight had been lifted. In the days that followed, news spread that Obinna Nwosu had collapsed in his penthouse, his once mighty empire crumbling overnight. His perfect image was gone. Investors pulled away, board members vanished, and his name became a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones. But the true story, and the one that mattered, was not in the headlines. It lived quietly in the heart of Chiamaka Okoye. At Ifeoma's boutique, Chiamaka stood among her sister's unfinished sketches. The mannequin still wore the half-stitched gown Ifeoma had left behind. Chiamaka touched the fabric, tears welling in her eyes, but this time, the tears carried peace, not despair. She had kept her promise. She had fought, not just for her sister, but for every young woman whose laughter had been stolen in silence. Her friend, a daisy, joined her carrying fresh flowers. "The city is healing," she said softly. "You've shown us that wealth without truth is a curse, and that power built on blood cannot last." Chiamaka nodded. "But the lesson isn't mine alone. It belongs to all of us. We must never be blinded by appearances. Not every shining light is pure. Sometimes true strength lies in listening to the wisdom of those who came before us." She glanced at the small ivory whistle resting on the table. Its glow had faded, its duty complete. Yet in its silence, it remained a reminder that courage guided by love and purity of heart could break even the darkest bond. That evening, as Lagos glittered once more with parties and laughter, Chiamaka walked along the Lekki shoreline. She breathed deeply, the ocean air filling her lungs. For the first time since Ifeoma's death, the city didn't feel like a graveyard. It felt alive. Above her, the night sky shimmered with stars. Beneath her, the waves whispered against the sand, and within her, peace finally bloomed. The serpent was gone. The city was free. And Chiamaka knew. Her sister's light would never die.